Pistons need a three, and they have just under 3 seconds to do it. Here's Chauncey Billups. Here it is. He's got it. He's got it. Vinny Johnson with 1 second to go. His shot is good.
Hello and welcome to episode 78 of the Motor City Hoops podcast, an instant recap and reaction episode from Wednesday night's game versus the Knicks. If you are new to the Motor City Hoops podcast, I am your host, Bryce Simon, a former D1 Hooper, current teacher, coach, husband, father of 3 amazing kids, and contributor at Detroit Bad Boys of SB Nation. And when I get the chance to watch our Pistons live, I'll do a short episode giving my immediate reactions, recap, and analysis of the game. Segments will include my biggest takeaways, player of the game, plays of the game, things to keep an eye on moving forward, and more. Before we get started with this one, I want to encourage you to go listen to episode 77 of the podcast that I recorded with Omari Sankofa, Pistons beat writer for the Detroit Free Press. That was one of our weekly Tuesday episode drops where we get into all the news and storylines surrounding the team and NBA. I also just dropped my newest breakdown for Detroit Bad Boys on Sunday, where I dove into Cade Cunningham during the month of December. Coming up for Motor City Hoops will be a couple more instant recap episodes before the next weekly episode that will actually drop on Wednesday, when we will be joined by Chris Oliver of Basketball Immersion to talk Pistons X and O's. I also hope to have a Luka Garza breakdown on Detroit Bad Boys by the end of the week or the weekend. Make sure you follow Motor City Hoops on Twitter at Motor City Hoops and subscribe to the Motor City Hoops YouTube channel so you never miss out on any of the content. We're recording this one immediately after the Pistons' very tough 85-94 loss. Just some pregame notes. This was a loss to the Knicks, of course. Dwayne Casey back coaching after missing a few road games. Really nice to see him on the sideline. The Knicks were playing the second of a back-to-back, a low-scoring win over the Timberwolves on Tuesday night. I just want to go through this real quick. These were the 12 active Pistons for Detroit. Sadiq Bey, Hamidou Diallo, Cheikh Diallo, Garza, Frank Jackson, Palmer, Pickett, Potter, Robinson, Servetus, Stanley, and Walton Jr. Some names there that you guys may not recognize, some names that I'm not even super familiar with. Here are the 12 inactive, that's right, 12 inactive Pistons. Cade, Jeremy Grant, Killian Hayes, Josh Jackson, Kojo, Lee, Livers, Lyles, Magruder, Olynyk, Chris Smith, and Isaiah Stewart. Some of those obviously because of COVID protocol still, some of those because of injury. The Pistons coming into this game 5-27. First quarter, lots of up and down, back and forth, but neither team making shots to start out here. Pistons go down 2-7, but come out of the 6-minute timeout with back-to-back threes and actually go on a 13-0 run, forcing a Knicks timeout, but the Knicks were able to answer with a 10-0 run of their own. Game gets a little offensive flow late in this quarter, especially for the Knicks. Both teams under 33% from the field in the first quarter, but not a lot of turnovers. So it was still, I won't say it was great watching, great basketball, but not a lot of turnovers, just guys throwing it all over the floor. 20-23 game, Pistons down going into the second. Only 7 points outside of that 13-0 run. So were the Pistons going to be able to find any offense throughout this game? They don't, at least to start the quarter. It was just as ugly as the start of the game. The Pistons try to answer with a couple back-to-back threes and get some momentum. And then I don't want to say tragedy. That'd be overkill for this. But another unfortunate event for Frank Jackson rolls his ankle and it didn't look good. They showed it slow motion on replay and that thing really turned. He was already dealing with one. I don't know if it's the same ankle or not. But this Pistons team can just not catch a break at all. I'll talk about that a little bit later. Going into half, the Pistons are 33% from 2, but 36% from 3. 8 turnovers, not awful. They were losing the rebounding battle and somehow are within 7, and honestly could have been even closer. 41-48 to start the second half. Pistons open on a 4-0 run and get a quick timeout from Tibbs. I thought this was a very important point in the game. They come out of the timeout. That's usually where you see the opposing team go on a run, but no, it was our Pistons with a 7-0 run. I thought that was a huge thing for momentum to keep it going right there. Definitely getting a whistle to start the second half. I didn't think the whole first half they got a very good whistle. I know I don't talk about the refs and that stuff very often, but I thought it was very apparent in this game. As soon as I say that, though, or as soon as I type that into my notes, the Pistons got a couple momentum calls that go against them, and there's even some more later. They actually built a 10-point lead with 5 minutes to go in the third, and I had me tweeting out, don't sub these dudes out, play these starters. So the starters tonight were Sadiq, Hami, Derek Walton Jr., Luka Garza. It was Frank Jackson. Obviously, at this point, he had rolled his ankle, and Cassius Stanley was getting those minutes, and they don't Pistons don't play again until Saturday. Maybe these guys can play huge minutes. And you just knew that the quote-unquote second unit wasn't really going to be able to hold the lead. They actually extended it to 14 here late in the third. And you can tell they're just hanging on. They were getting tired. They were definitely going to have to sub out a huge Sadiq Bey step back three, followed by a stop. And it looked like they were going to have all the momentum and a 10-point lead going into the fourth. And unfortunately, a turnover leads to an and one from Alec Burks, who we're going to talk a lot about in this episode, about the only positive for the Knicks. And it's just a 7-point lead going into the fourth. And I just felt like the second unit had to just hold on just a little bit. Like maybe if they could get a bucket or some stops or something, slow the momentum of the game, and let those starters get a breather, then the Pistons would have a chance. But an immediate 7-0 run from the Knicks to build off the end of the third. Again, Alex Berg been very impressive on the floor. The starters do return quickly. Casey brings them back in with, I think, only 2 minutes into the fourth quarter. I mean, if you look at minutes, Bey plays 43, Diallo 38, Walton Jr. 36, Garza 39. That's a lot of minutes for Luka Garza. And that end of the third quarter sequence, that may have been the game changer. You guys know how much I love to talk about momentum, and that really changed momentum. Instead of the Pistons being up 10 and momentum going into the fourth, the Knicks stole it. And then it ends up being a 14-0 Knicks run going into the fourth before Bey finally hits a three. We're going to talk about the Pistons trapping ball screens with Luka Garza. The Knicks finally started to get comfortable with that. They extend the lead to 10 with 4:30 after a couple missed chances for the Pistons. Now they do have one more flurry, Hamidou Diallo. You're going to see Diallo and Sadiq Bey. You're going to hear those names a lot during this episode. But he goes on a little flurry, Diallo does. 5-point game. We get a miss, but give up an offensive rebound. And Burke strikes again, knocks down a three. Next possession, nail in the coffin, 4-point play to get to his 34 points on the night. Just a few takeaways for me tonight. 3, it is definitely time to get our dudes back. Like, don't get me wrong, guys. Like, there's something about watching these games that is still intriguing and exciting for me. I hope you can hear it in my voice. I had somebody tweet at me that they like the positivity and the energy that Motor City Hoops brings every episode. And it's not going away no matter what. But I am ready to see Cade. I'm ready to see Killian, Isaiah Stewart, all those guys. I'm ready to see those guys back on the floor. The silver lining is we've got a chance to see some guys, Sadiq Bey and Hamid Diallo, in larger roles. I'll talk about that later. And then some of these other guys, it is cool stories, not just for the Pistons, but around the NBA. Now, obviously, the circumstances around why is not great or good or anything, and it sucks, and I hate it. But I do think there's something, if there is a silver lining, it's that we're getting to see some of these guys play. I'm not sure I see those opportunities turning in anything more for these guys. I know there's been some positive vibes, like, it'll be announced that they're signing so-and-so to a 10-day hardship or whatever it is. But I don't see any of these guys being any more than G League players. It will be interesting. I think these are names to keep in the back of our minds for G League players, Summer League players, training camp players. But outside of those expanded roles that I talked about, and then, a good long look here at Luka Garza, who, like I said, I'm going to do a breakdown on. I should hopefully have that by the end of the week. Outside of those, I'm not sure we can take much from this. I was talking to Wes before the episode. I'm not sure Cheikh Diallo has necessarily looked great. That's a guy that was even being talked about before all of this happened as he was playing with the G League team. I don't think he's really shown it. Walton Jr. shown some flashes. I thought Cassius Stanley honestly did not look good. And now it's not necessarily fair because essentially they're playing with other G League guys against NBA competition. But I just don't know that we've seen anything from any of these guys that's going to warrant us seeing them with the Pistons, at all this season, of course, but maybe even in the future. And then my last takeaway, this team may never get any sort of chemistry. And this comes from the Frank Jackson rolled ankle there in the second quarter between injuries, COVID, players in and out of the lineup. Guys, I'm working on a collaboration with Matt Issa, a good friend of mine, a good friend of the podcast, on Cade Cunningham for basketballnews.com. And I was telling him, like you just haven't seen any of these lineups together. Cade was hurt to start the year, then Killian's thumb, then Olynyk, then Jeremy, now COVID, now Frank Jackson rolls his ankle. So even when these guys start to come back, Frank Jackson may not even be there to play with them. And Jeremy and Olynyk are still going to be out. Isaiah Livers, a guy who, this would have been a perfect opportunity for him to get some minutes and a chance to see what he could do. He hasn't been playing. So, it's tough right now for the Pistons. I know it is for every team in the association, but I just wonder if it's going to be one of those years where we just see a ton of different starting lineups, a ton of rotations, and you just maybe never see that chemistry and flow. 3-player of the game tonight, like always, first, Saddiq Bey. 32 points on 19 shots. Ku Cahill, you guys know, a good friend of ours and of the podcast as well. He tweeted this out. Somebody asked, what have Saddiq and Hami really shown? And Ku, I think he said, more opportunities, and they're being more efficient in those opportunities. Like, there's something to be said for the fact that they're options 1 and 2, and not only are they scoring 32 and 31 points for Bey and Hami, but they're doing it efficiently. 9 and 19 from the field, 16 of 13 from 3, 8 of 8 from the free throw line for Saddiq Bey, along with 9 rebounds, 3 assists. He did have 3 turnovers, but I actually thought he handled double teams and made some nice reads. Now, it wasn't perfect from Saddiq Bey, but I thought he looked really, really good tonight, guys. And while I don't know that he's going to get 19 shots a lot, I thought he looked really good in his opportunities. Hamid Diallo, he's my second player of the game. 31 points on 19 shots. 13 and 19 from the field, only took 2 threes, which I thought was really good for him because he had opportunities and he turned them down 1 of 2 from 3. 13 rebounds, 4 assists, 4 steals. Again, he had 4 turnovers. But, again, he's having to handle the ball way more than you would expect. So those guys score 63 of the 85, and they also combined for 22 rebounds. Just a huge night from those two guys. Almost every time you looked up, it was those two guys doing something. My third player of the game, the fans, for showing up to LCA tonight. I wasn't there. As you guys know, I'm in the basement of my house in Southwest Kansas, but I thought it was so cool seeing on Twitter, and I believe it was Ryan LaPrade. I hope I said that last name right. Ryan, if you listen to the Motor City Hoops podcast, or if somebody lets you know, he tweeted out, "I'm here tonight. Lower bowl is nearly full. Upper deck is 75% full. Great crowd." That is awesome. Again, what did I say the Pistons record is? Right now, 5 and 27 coming into the game. No Cade, no Jeremy, no Killian, none of those guys playing. And we get tweets like that talking about the fan base. And, they were talking about, there's tweets talking about how it was loud and, there was energy in the gym. That's awesome. That's why I love the Pistons community. I love being a part of it. I love that people are still going to the games, that people are still talking about it, whether it's Twitter or Facebook or Reddit, wherever all this Pistons talk goes on. I love it. I'm here for it. And that's my third player of the game tonight is the fans. Okay, not just the ones that showed up to LCA, but all the ones listening to podcasts, engaging, going to Detroit Bad Boys, even Piston Powered, everybody. Okay, that is big time that you guys are still engaged. 2 plays of the game tonight, both of them from the third quarter when the Pistons were making that run. How about a Hami rebound? Skies for a rebound, kick ahead, Bey catches it, immediately goes into a post-up. Love this from Saddiq Bey. He gets the double, dribbles out of it, Hami cuts, passes to him, kind of a reverse layup and the foul. Just a beautiful possession, you guys know how much I love those sequences, okay? And that was a beautiful sequence there from Bey and Hami. See how these two guys are really dominating the episode. And then a little bit later, 5:55 to go in the third, Bey again takes on a double, passes to Hami, or there's a one more to Hami, turns down the 3. I love that from Hamidou Diallo tonight. Turns down the 3, drives it in, and gets the bucket. I thought those 2 plays were really, really big-time plays there in the third quarter when they were making their runs, and just impressive from those guys. I have 3 things to keep an eye on. All will involve probably the 3 players that you will see extended minutes from for this team. First, Luka Garza. I've said that I don't think you can do anything in ball screen other than play drop coverage with Luka Garza. I've said that. And you guys, I'll hold my own receipts, guys, whenever it's necessary. Tonight, they used him trapping in those ball screen situations, and it looked good at times. It really did. Early on, it really, really frustrated the Knicks. And it looked like they were switching it up. I would really love to know whether Luka was getting to decide when it happened based on where he was at, if it was on certain players or whatever it was. But I like that little switch up there from the drop coverage. Again, I'm doing a breakdown. It'll be out soon, and I'm really going to dive into Luka in the drop coverage, which quite honestly, I don't think he's very good at. I hate to be negative. I don't think he's very good in the drop coverage, but the trap looked better tonight. Now, again, as me and producer Wes Davenport were talking about before the episode, you play a team that has a good short roll passer, a team with a lob threat, a team with shooters, Like, it puts a lot of pressure on your defense when you're trapping, or a guy that can split that, which we saw once late in the game from the Knicks. But I do thought that was a nice little switch up. And then one other little thing, I think he has to become a more willing and able passer. I really do. He's 1 of 10 from the field tonight. The shooting has to come. That's the bare minimum for Luka Garza to be playing in the NBA, is he's got to be making shots, because that's really his positive side. Now, he is a good screen setter as well, but I think he has to be a willing and able passer. There was a play in the fourth quarter. Maybe he got fouled. I don't know. It doesn't matter to me. He ends up shooting it off the back of the backboard. There was 2 Pistons standing wide open in front of the rim if he makes the pass. Saddiq Bey. So again, I'll be honest here. He turned down 2 shots in the lane in the first 4 minutes. And I typed into my notes that as a negative. And then as I watched him play more and I thought about it, I was like, no, that's him staying within himself. That's him understanding his limitations and knowing what shots he should take and what shots he shouldn't. Is he a little bit of a flawed player when talking about going to the basket and off the dribble? Yeah, maybe so. But he's still in his second year. We've seen him try those things. It wasn't successful. He can work on it next off season. For the rest of this season, I loved what we saw tonight, which was him staying within himself. And so I want to see, is this a Saddiq Bey we get when everybody is back? Is this what we're going to see, this efficiency? How will he look when Jeremy Grant returns, if he plays another game in a Pistons uniform, if he's not traded before he returns from the injury? Is this the Saddiq Bey we're going to see? Because he's been playing really well lately for the Pistons. As I pull up his game logs, 32, 23, 23, 15, 26, 23, 28, and that would be over his last 2, 4, 6, 7 games. So really nice stretch here from Saddiq Bey. And so I think it's because he's playing within himself, he's confident, he's shooting the ball well. RB Nesbitt from Twitter talking about his defense on Randle. Okay, I think Julius Randle is a good matchup for Saddiq Bey. I know Julius Randle is a good player, but I think just what Julius Randle is, I think those are the kind of guys that Saddiq Bey can be matching up with and do a good job. And a shout out to RB Nesbitt. Again, I hope I'm saying that correctly. He's somebody that interacts on Twitter, follower, listens to the podcast. Shout out, my guy. I appreciate you interacting, listening to the podcast, and giving that little nugget there with Saddiq Bey guarding Julius Randle. And then my final one, Hamidou Diallo. And listen, you guys know how much I love Hamidou Diallo. I don't want this to be negative. I just made him one of the players of the game. 31 points, 13 rebounds, 4 assists, 4 steals. Okay. But the defense has to get better, guys. The court awareness has to get better. He's shown the mid-range, which I really like. He's shown the athletic ability, the rebounding he's turned down shots to drive. I love it all. I really do. I don't want it to be too negative, but he messed up a trap with Luka Garza twice where it was supposed to be a trap. Okay, and one ended up in a dunk. He gets backdoored. How about the end of a game a few games ago? He didn't know the play after the timeout. He messed that up. Like, I'm just saying those other intangible things that maybe don't always show up in a box score. And I feel like I'm always asking for more from Hami. And maybe that's the coach in me, like trying to want to see the best of Hami come out. And I know Casey and his staff is doing the same thing. And I'm sure Hami's working on it. But those are the things I want to see from Hami. Like, he's not going to get 30 and 13 every night, especially when guys return. But because his role is going to be a little bit different when everyone is back, I think he has to do those other things better. He has to be engaged defensively. There was a couple times on the ball tonight where maybe he was just gassed, but I don't think he guarded the ball as well as he could. So again, I love everything he's doing. I don't want it to be too negative, but I'd like to see those things come along as well. And something to keep an eye on for sure with him is, what is his role going to be when everyone is back and healthy? He was going to stay in the starting lineup as we slowly get guys back. But again, what happens, if Jeremy Grant isn't traded, are you going to move? You're not going to move Saddiq Bey to the bench the way he's playing. Do you move Killian to the bench and, go really big? I don't know. It'll be very interesting to see what his role is, starter, second unit, and then how he performs in that role when those guys get back. Some thoughts on the other team. I'm not impressed with Julius Randle in the games we've seen. I've said this before, if you listen to the podcast, I don't see a ton of other NBA games outside of the Pistons. And so a lot of my thoughts and opinions on those guys come just from those games. But what I've seen of Randle in these games and other games and just listening to other people, it seems like what happened in the playoffs last year has carried over. Honestly, it's the same with Emmanuel Quickley. I saw him at Summer League. Tonight, he did have 18 points, but on 4 of 13 shooting, not a whole lot else in the stat column. Like, I just haven't always necessarily been super impressed with him either. I continue to be intrigued by Mitchell Robinson, but you could see the motor questions come into play in this game, again, as those starters for the Knicks set a lot of minutes. And props to Tibbs for leaving those guys on the bench and rolling with his second unit and trusting Alec Burks and those guys to finish out the game. Taj Gibson's stat line wasn't overly impressive, but I thought he made some really nice plays. And then one thing that I want to finish, and this is a tease to a topic we'll get to in a later episode, but I want to know what you guys think. Do you think that the Knicks and Tibbs were happy with this win? Do you think they were satisfied? Because I listened to SiriusXM this morning. I believe it was the Clippers with a 1-point win, and Doc Rivers got upset about a question that was asking him if he was happy with the 1-point win with how many players the other team had out. And SiriusXM was saying that, like, you know, that's an unfair question. And in the NBA, winning's winning no matter what. And I'm just curious, like, is that true? How do you guys feel about that? And I'll give my thoughts and opinions on that on a later episode. A quick look ahead to the Spurs on Saturday night. So the Pistons get a couple days off here. Should be the last game of everyone out, I think. I hope, right? Like, maybe we're going to get Cade back. There's these new protocols that have gone into place. I'm hoping we have somebody back. I'll watch the game regardless, and I'll watch with this as much focus and energy as I always do. But like I said earlier in my biggest takeaways, I'm ready for some of those guys to be back. The Spurs lost to Utah on Monday night by 6. And then as we record this tonight, their game against Miami was postponed. I just remember now, I saw that on Twitter. Miami didn't have enough players. They couldn't suit up the 8 because I believe they were using G League players from the I don't know the whole dynamics of it. If somebody can explain that to me, I would love to know. But that game was postponed for the Spurs on Wednesday night. They will be playing Memphis on New Year's Eve, so it'll be a back-to-back for them. Of course, they're coming off beating the Pistons 109-144 on Sunday, where they shot 56% from the field, 48% from three. I am interested to see Luka Garza, assuming not everybody is back. We'll see Luka Garza still and see how he looks. This was a game where he played drop coverage, and quite honestly, guys, he kind of got exposed. The bigs for the Spurs really had their way in that, so I'm interested to see. And this is a Spurs team, incredibly balanced at scoring across the board, and so it'll be interesting to see if the Pistons can put up a better fight, at least defensively. As always, I want to thank my guy, Wes Davenport, the producer of the Motor City Hoops podcast, who takes care of so many things behind the scenes to make the podcast better for you and easier for me. I also want to thank you, the listener, for taking time out of your day to listen to the podcast. Please give us a follow on Twitter, subscribe on YouTube, and from me and Wes and all of Motor City Hoops, my family, we wish you all a fun and safe New Year's. Thank you for listening. Go Pistons, and we'll talk to you soon.